In the news lately, there's been a lot of discussion about university presidents in light of some testimony that some major university presidents gave to Congress recently that resulted in some resignations, some firings, all these sorts of things. A little bit of background on me: I'm a faculty member at a medium-sized private university. I interact with a lot of people in the community. As a result, a lot of people know that I'm a professor and will come up and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Saw this on the news, and so forth and so on. I thought I'd make a video, provide a little context, and at least my context about this issue, and to clear up some misconceptions about what university presidents typically do. A little bit about my background. I've taught in university settings for about 16 years, the last 12 full-time. Do I have in-depth relationships with university presidents? No, not really. I know one well. I would consider them a friend. I've known others as an instructor for folks that ended up being university presidents. I've also had interactions with university presidents at most of the places that I've been in one way or another. Usually just, they know who I was kind of thing. But I've known some of them a little bit better and been on some focus groups and things like that with a few. That's kind of my background with my interactions and knowledge of university presidents. I'm not hanging around with them or anything like that, but I feel like I've been in academia long enough to be able to speak to this and maybe, as I said, clear up some misconceptions. University presidents, what's their job in the university? Primarily, and this isn't the case for all universities, but what their job is to raise money. They're also to serve as the face of the university itself. Those two roles involve a lot of hobnobbing, a lot of shaking hands, making deals, doing these kinds of things. Often we don't think of university presidents like that, but that's largely what their role is. They attend a lot of ceremonies. It's a 24/7 job, no question about it. A crisis happens, the president has to at least be informed, if not make a statement. They usually have PR people that are assigned to them. They have staff that help them do all the things. In some ways, kind of analogous to a CEO of a company. There are differences, but that's one analogy. One other potential analogy is sort of like a baseball manager or a football coach at a professional level. You'll see folks move around quite a bit. For instance, recently in my state, the president of the University of Nebraska system was Ted Carter, who is a retired admiral. Prior to serving as the president of the University of Nebraska system, he was the provost, I believe. Anyway, a very similar position at the U.S. Naval Academy. Basically, he was in charge of the U.S. Naval Academy from soup to nuts, so to speak. I'm sure there's a naval analogy, but I'm probably not qualified to make that. He was here for, about a decade at the University of Nebraska system, and recently left to go to Ohio State University. It's kind of like, if you look at his career in academia, of course, he was an admiral before that, and a pilot, and all kinds of amazing things. And you can check out Ward Carroll's channel if you want, because there's a lot of interviews that Ted Carter has done, because they had a relationship, about his naval career, which just are amazing. But I digress. Anyway, Ted Carter moving from the Naval Academy to University of Nebraska to Ohio State University is kind of like going from a respected minor league franchise to maybe somebody like the Twins, and then going to the Yankees. That's the kind of position it is. And you see this quite frequently. When I was at another university, the president had been the president at Texas A&M and then moved to this particular university. This sort of thing kind of happens all the time. These people have agents. generally speaking. They have the hiring of such a person is done usually by hiring firms, all of these kinds of things. So this is a whole stratosphere type of situation that people like me don't really have anything to do with. When a university president is hired, they answer to a board of directors. And the board of directors has the hire and fire authority for the president and some other senior administrative positions. And so the university president comes in. Sometimes they have led or even created some initiatives that are very important to them. At the university I'm at now, absolutely came in, had a vision, had some things, and accomplished those things. But that's kind of their role, is to come in, have these initiatives, have the money to do it, and to ensure that the institution has a good reputation and is seen and is visible in the community and all these kinds of things. You'll notice that I'm not talking about how the president works with faculty much, because they don't. Typically, university presidents, they'll interact with faculty, but that's not their role. And oftentimes there is a chief academic officer, which sits in a different spot and is called many things, that interacts with faculty and kind of translates faculty wishes and desires and challenges and such through the administration to the president. They're also human beings, and they have feelings and they have families and they have all these things. And at one point or another, in many cases, but not all, university presidents were once faculty members. And generally speaking, how someone who was a faculty member might move into a position to be a president would be that they would begin and do a really great job as a faculty member in whatever department they are in. And then some administrator or administrators might say, hey, you're doing a really great job. How about if you do this project for us? And if they have some aptitude for that, and they kind of have a penchant for putting together people, places, things, and resources to achieve goals, then they might move into a position where they are a dean or something like that eventually, and then kind of work their way up through that administrative kind of chain of command. The other thing is that universities tend to be very vertically integrated. And so it's extremely difficult, or if not impossible, for a staff member or a faculty member to make an appointment to go talk to the president. There are places where they'll reach out for that feedback. One university I was at, the president of the university said, hey, I've got an email address. You can email me anytime. I emailed them about a heating and cooling problem that I thought was an issue in a particular building, and how that's got to be costing a lot of money. And I emailed them. He did respond back, and I don't think anything ever happened with it, but give him credit for that. A few times I've been on some focus groups where the president was there. I've run across the president, and previous president at a university where I'm at now used to be kind of all over the place, and I would run into him relatively frequently, and we'd always have like some pleasant banter or something like that. Current president, I see him too, and I've bounced across him in a few different settings, a couple focus group type things, stuff like that. The university that I actually started at when I was just an adjunct at the community college, which was a pretty big community college, frankly, actually invited me out to go for lunch, and we talked about all range of things. And I think in that particular case, that person might have had some talent acquisition duties as well. And in some ways, at that point, just purely aside, I used to be in business and then transitioned into working in academia. And so I think that this person who had a similar background was like, hey, this is somebody that I can probably relate to. And we had some good conversations over the time while I worked there. So these presidents end up in these positions, and Some of the things that people have said to me recently are, well, these super liberal presidents are ruining these universities and, indoctrination stuff and all this nonsense, because university presidents don't have anything to do with any of that. They really don't. University presidents speak for the institution. So regardless of what their personal opinions are, which they may express from time to time, they're not about that. They're not about coming someplace and recrafting the university in their own image. Maybe that happens sometimes, I don't know, but I really doubt it, because again, in virtually every university that I know of, you have a board and then you have a president. President answers to the board. And so in some ways, they're just there to navigate those things. And again, what are their priorities? Raising money, being that face of the institution, and protecting the institution. And so it was a little bit surprising to see some of these remarks coming out. These people have people who advise them, like the people who sit behind the people who testify. They had to have some people telling them, like, this might come up, this is how you work around this, or this is what you should say if that comes up. I don't know what happened, but that didn't happen at all. The other thing that is necessarily part of the role of a president is politics, because they represent a coalition of interests that are, embodied in the alumni who donate to the university, the board of trustees of the university, and things like that. They represent those interests. And so therefore, again, regardless of what they might think personally, that's what they're there to do. And frankly, most of the time, administrators, again, their priorities are not about radical change and indoctrination and Marxism and all of this madness. They're not about that. They're about those things that I talked about earlier: being the face of the institution, preserving the reputation of the institution, and raising money for large-scale efforts like new buildings, new schools, et cetera, new initiatives. I think that in many cases, some of these presidents kind of get caught in that whole system to be unable to really say the commonsensical thing that probably would have been reasonable and acceptable to the people in Congress to walk into a gotcha question like that. It's a little bit surprising that happened to me. I hope that's helpful in some way, and that perhaps you understand the system of what goes on in your local, colleges and universities a little bit better. Thanks. I'd also add, equivocating about anti-Semitism is horrific. It's probably not that surprising that they attempted to kind of either or it, given the nature of their positions and how controversy is such an anathema to such people. Come here, buddy. Come here. Yeah, I wanted to add one caveat to that. By the way, this is pre-Blizzard, Nebraska. In that discussion about presidents and their purposes, given that their primary role is to serve as that public-facing person and raise money, when they get involved in these controversial things, like has happened to some of these folks, obviously that impinges their ability to do that, which creates problems for their continued roles as president. Furthermore, I would say that you may notice some of these people have had their presidency, they've lost that, but they remain a faculty person, and they get to keep that job because saying controversial things as a faculty member is not necessarily really ever a problem, but it is a problem when you're president. So your administrative title may go away, and that person can go back to be a faculty member, and that's legit. I mean, there's contractual things about being a faculty and traditions and such that govern that, which are quite different than serving in an executive role like that. Furthermore, some of these people have become embroiled in plagiarism scandals, which is a very complex subject. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it kind of is. So from an academic perspective, that deserves an entirely different video, which if you'd like to hear me talk about that, I'd be happy to do so. But it's really kind of outside the scope of this particular discussion. So at any rate, thanks a lot, and hope you all have a great day.